What's up everyone? Alex here. Square Enix is on a roll this year, practically releasing a game almost every month. And with Triangle Strategy, Tactics Ogre Reborn, and DioField Chronicle all releasing this year, I don't think it's hyperbole to say that tactical RPG fans are feasting right now. Speaking of, I have played through the recently released DioField Chronicle demo more than 3 times since its launch, and I finally managed to pry myself away from my PS4 Pro to make this video and share what I think. And I have to issue this disclaimer. I've made no secret of my opinions regarding strategy RPGs, as it's really not my favorite genre. So if DioField Chronicle's demo got me hooked on it, and I'm not even a fan of the genre, I can only imagine how the genre's fans will react. And so, in this video, I want to mainly go over how DioField Chronicle's battle and progression systems work, and share my thoughts about the demo overall. But before all of that, I want to remind you that this video is made possible by viewers like you, so please leave a like, post a comment telling me what you think of the demo, and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video. Square Enix describes DioField Chronicle's combat as a real-time tactical battle system, or RTTB for short. What this really means is that it blends elements of RTS games like StarCraft and Command & Conquer with elements of tactical games like Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre. If this sounds a bit confusing, don't worry, I'll break it down for you here. In DioField Chronicle, you can command your troops pretty much like any other RTS. There are several ways you can select your troops, set waypoints, and tell them to attack people. But much like many RTS games, your troops will take a ton of damage real quick. And since there isn't any base building, meaning you'll only have your troops to control, you'll have to ensure that everyone survives each encounter. RTSs to me are a test of situational awareness mixed with strategy. But unlike other games in that genre, you won't need to have a high APM, or actions per minute, in order to play DioField Chronicle. Because that's where the tactical part of RTTB comes in. For starters, you can only bring 4 characters in combat. I like 4. 4 is the magic number for classic Final Fantasy games, so I don't doubt that that's probably the reason for this number. I'll elaborate more on what you can do with the 4 characters later, but I just wanted to take the time to highlight this to make it apparent that there's not a lot of characters to control in a game of this style. Now, each character has special skills that utilize EP, and whenever you activate a skill, it triggers a cooldown, preventing them from executing additional commands back to back. And this is actually where things get interesting, because in order to activate a skill, you press the triangle button on PlayStation, which brings up a command menu that displays a list of skills, items, and summons that they can use. More importantly, doing this will pause the action on screen, allowing you to properly survey what's happening in your vicinity. There is an option to view the entire battlefield by pressing R2, but I'll get to that later. I should point out that you cannot move characters while the command menu is up. In order to do so, you will need to get out of the menu, let the battle move forward in real time while you select a character to move. And as mentioned before, there are many ways to select characters, and when you do, the battle pauses again to let you set waypoints and/or determine your character's destination, whether it's a specific location or a specific target. And much like games like Final Fantasy Tactics, where you and your enemies are facing are super important, as any attacks from behind will be considered ambush damage. This is actually really cool, especially because you literally have a character that is practically a ninja who can do an AoE damage attack and get behind opponents while one of your characters gets their attention. There are also bosses that can place AoE markers on the ground and charge up to deliver a massive attack, so your mastery of how you move your characters will be crucial in these cases. This makes positioning in a game with real-time strategy elements extremely important. And much like other tactical games, you will be able to see your enemy's visibility when you move a character. And this is important, especially if you want to lure them towards a trap like an exploding barrel, for example. And if many of you are saying, wow, gee, that really sounds familiar, a lot of how DioField Chronicle plays is reminiscent of 2020's 13th Sentinel's Aegis Rim, in some ways. For example, both games have real-time elements, but when you issue a command to a specific character, whether via command menu or movement, battle pauses to allow you to assess the field. And the biggest difference, of course, is that there are several different objectives per mission in DioField Chronicle, unlike the mostly tower defense-like objectives in 13 Sentinels. Now, going back to a few elements here, you can view the entire battlefield with R2, which makes everything look like a diorama. But personally, I found it difficult to see where my characters are facing, especially since they're changed into figurines. I also mentioned that you can only have 4 characters in your party at any given time. However, you may assign a character as an adjutant to one of these characters, which will give those specific party members access to the adjutant skills. The catch to this is that the adjutant will earn less experience. And what I did in my case is that I actually set Waltakin as Isolaire's adjutant, giving the latter access to all of Waltakin's healing and AoE skills, making Isolaire into a tank that can heal themselves. The demo gives you access to several features that allow you to customize your character. In between battles, each character will have their own AP pool, which you can spend to upgrade certain traits. For instance, you can upgrade the amount of health Isolaire gains back during healing, or improve her defense against auto attacks. There's also a shop at your base where you can buy new weapons, accessories that'll improve your stats, of which you can equip 2 at a time, and items to use during combat. But you have to remember to equip these items in order to use them in battle. There's also a trainer that can help upgrade your skills via skill trees. Now, these skill trees are categorized by tanks and damage classes, ranged physical classes, mounted classes, and mages. And unlike AP, your SP pool is shared across all of your characters. So don't be like me and spend it on a skill whose character isn't even in your party yet, because you could totally do that. Outside of the combat and progression systems, I really love the diorama look. And despite the R2 map feeling less useful to me, making the characters in Battlefield look like figurines in a diorama is really cool. And this is of course achieved by a tilt-shift effect, which is mostly seen in HD 2D games like Octopath Traveler and the recently released Live Alive, if we're talking about Square Enix games. I also really like the voice acting, and this sounds like the localization and voice work was done in the UK. So if you played Square Enix games with voiceover work that sounds from that region, it's of comparable quality. The plot itself is very politically driven. There's wars happening, secret dealings, and a ton of bandits too. And Square Enix described it as such. The DioField Chronicle is set in a beautiful and unique world blending fantasy, medieval, and modern-day influences. Under the steady hand of the Shatham legacy, the Kingdom of Alatane on DioField Island has known peace for 200 years, but suddenly find themselves cast into an age of uncertainty due to the rise of warlike powers and modern magic. DioField Chronicle's character designs were made by Taiki, who is responsible for the character designs of Lord of Vermilion 3 and 4, which are collectible card games that are similar to Hearthstone that you can play in arcades in Japan. The concept art was done by Isamu Kamikokuryo, who also worked on Final Fantasy XII and Final Fantasy XIII. The epic soundtrack is composed by Ramin Djawadi and Brandon Campbell, who are credited for writing songs for Game of Thrones. And the game is developed by Lancars, but I caution anyone from looking into their catalog, because despite them working on this year's Monarch, they are also known to be a for-hire studio that works for other people. What this basically means is that DioField Chronicle's creative control rests upon Square Enix and not said developer. With all that said, I really enjoyed the demo for DioField Chronicle, and I invite you all to take a couple or so hours to play this, especially if you're a turn-based RPG fan who's reluctant to play strategy or tactical RPGs, because there's a lot to love here. The demo is available on PlayStation and Xbox platforms, as well as Switch and PC. And as I said, it's 2.5 hours long, with saves that carry over to the full game. Don't you just love these types of demos? DioField Chronicle is coming out on September 22nd on PlayStation and Xbox platforms, as well as Switch and PC. What do you think of DioField Chronicle so far? Have you played the demo? What do you think? Post your thoughts in the comments below and let's talk about it. And if you like RPGs, Japanese, indies, niche titles, and more, please consider subscribing to the channel for future coverage. And if you've been a long-time subscriber, I invite you to join the $5 tier on my Patreon, where you can gain early access to my videos at patreon.com/backlogbattle. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.